Hello and welcome to the Spandex and Wine podcast. I'm your host, Robin Hackney, and I'm so happy that you're here. This podcast is a place for conversations about balancing a healthy lifestyle and being happy, more specifically, happy hour. Together, we'll explore all things wellness and wine. I hope you learn a little, laugh a lot, and along the way, know you're not alone on this balanced wellness journey. Ready to jump in? Pour something in your glass that makes you happy because it's time for Spandex and Wine. Hello and welcome to the Spandex and Wine podcast. Yes, it's me, Robin Hackney. I'm a little under the weather, so my voice is a bit off. But the good news is that the conversation with today's guest was recorded ahead of time, so you don't have to listen to me like this throughout the episode. I sat down with Kristina Driscoll. She is the podcast host of She's Brave podcast and also a podcast instructor. And her course is Podcast Mastery, Your 6-Month Journey to the Global Elite. I think you'll find that you can pull so much wisdom out of this conversation, and I can't wait for you to hear what she has to say. Well, hello and welcome to the Spandex and Wine podcast. Kristina, I'm so happy that you're here.
I'm thrilled to be here, Robin. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Oh, absolutely. I've been watching you grow on Instagram and love your podcast, She's Brave podcast. And I'm anxious to hear about how you came up with that name. I know that you've had your own wellness issues in your family that you've had to deal with. So if you don't mind, let's just jump into your story.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the very abbreviated Cliff Notes version of
Okay.
my story so that we can dive into the good stuff of,
Okay.
how I grew my podcast so fast and how life changed so dramatically for me in so many great ways. But long story short, I met my husband through a hiking club. I live in the Seattle area. He was the hike leader for a hike on Mount Rainier. And I got out of the car at the trailhead and our eyes locked. And it was kind of that whole magnetic thing where you're just like, I need to get to know this person better. But dang it, I have to tell you, those trails on Mount Rainier, they are so freaking narrow. They're so narrow. So I had to elbow my way to the front of the line, single file only, and get right behind him and chat with him. And, it was like a 6-8 hour hike. And we got a lot of great conversations in. And, the long and short of it is 6 months later, we were married. And
oh my gosh, that's great.
And it was very unconventional because he was 24 years older than me. But I had done a lot of spiritual work on myself in my 20s. I'd had one marriage, just a very short marriage that ended in divorce, and realized that I had married someone who was a very controlling person. And that introduced me to therapy. And through therapy, I really just started down this huge self-development journey, reading books and everything else. How can I not make the same mistake again when I marry again, which I didn't.
Good.
Yeah. But I kind of feel like because I had spent all that time really trying to make myself better, I think that was really what brought us together. My husband was 24 years older than me. He had never married, never had kids. And it was just this incredible relationship. And 4 years later, we had our son. We did have some infertility, but looking back on that now, I'm so glad we had those 4 magical years, just the two of us. Yeah. And it was one thing. And then another thing, having a child. And then when our son was 5, my husband got early-onset Alzheimer's. And so it was a long 12-year journey. And I just, again, I was listening to my own heart. I was a financial advisor. And when our son was born, I just changed my mind. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I'd waited so long to be a mom. And so really, all that time, I was a stay-at-home mom. And then I was a caregiver to my husband. In society's eyes, Robin, I was a nobody. Okay. Yeah. Really, but then everything switched and changed. My husband passed away. Not too long after that, my son graduated from high school, and I had this deeply unsettled feeling. Okay, we all get it, right? Like we all get
Yeah.
that deeply unsettled feeling. And I didn't know what it was or why it was. But, I have found out that when you get that deeply unsettled feeling, it's because deep inside your heart that you're meant for more.
Hmm.
And so, again, I was feeling like a bit stuck. Well, actually very stuck. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't want to go back to financial advising. I mean, I still like enjoy doing it for myself, but I don't want to go back to that. This is a new phase of my life. So I always tell people just do something. Go to that chamber
Yeah.
of commerce meeting, start meeting people. However, join a class online or in person, or get yourself out there in some way, because that will lead you to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So I decided to sign up for a podcasting class, not really
Hmm.
knowing if I had the guts and the courage to do it. Truly,
Yeah.
truly.
Yep.
I
Yep.
was so quiet in the back of the class. Well, in the back of the Zoom class, not
Yes.
saying a peep, not even. But then one day somebody said, "Hey, I want to practice interviewing. Does anybody want to practice with me?" And I said, okay, sure. And I found that for me, just taking like a tiny step at a time made all the difference for me. Like for me, like trying to set these big grandiose goals out there somewhere in the future was just too
Hmm.
overwhelming and not really believable even to me. So, but I could always set and achieve like one step ahead. And
Hmm.
I want to tell you also the interesting story of how I picked my podcast topic. So my podcast is called She's Brave with
Hmm.
Kristina Driscoll. That's not how I started out at all. So,
Okay.
yeah. So I really thought that I was going to do a podcast on caregiving because it was such a hard journey and I felt very alone at times. And I know there's just a huge need there out in the world for more connection among
Hmm.
caregivers and more encouragement to connect, because sometimes you
Yeah.
self isolate too. And but when I kept, when I started working on that as my podcast topic, it felt really heavy, Robin.
Yeah.
And it was what I realized is that it was making me live constantly in my past, talking about my past. It was all about, and then I would feel sad and heavy. And when you live too much in the past, you get depressed. And
Yeah.
also, if you live too much in the future, you get too anxious. So
Hmm.
that's why everybody's always talking about, like, let's try to live in the now and the present. But here's a key secret that's really not that much of a secret. But if you work with many, many, many coaches and or, in classes, they will have you do this exercise. And it's the most powerful exercise I ever did for identifying what I wanted to do with my life. And what it was just basically reach out to 5 people
Hmm.
and ask them how they saw me. Like, what are my greatest strengths? What do you think are my strengths? And Robin, the same answer kept coming back to me over and over and over again. Everybody said, you know, you're incredibly brave. You know what? You're really resilient
Hmm.
and you're 100% authentic. You're 100% authentic to yourself. You're 100% authentic about who you are. You are unapologetic about who you are when you make decisions. You don't care what other people think. You do what's best for you and your family. Sometimes that means being unconventional, whatever, but
Hmm.
that's what they all said. And what I realized is that, especially, I think in some ways it's just as bad, if not worse, now for women with social media. What I'm trying to get women's brave voices out in the world about how they overcame something, how they were able to do something. Start up that business is like one of my favorite topics. I do have a
Yeah.
lot of CEOs and people like that on my podcast, but I feel like social media kind of feeds us what we should like, what should bring us happiness and what success looks like. It should look this way. And so unconsciously, we don't even know it, but we're basically just kind of like, oh, well, I need to have a big house and a big car and I have to have this income and I have to look like this and blah, 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 and instead of actually going within and saying, what is it that I really want? What is it that will
Mm-hmm.
make me happy? Like, not what the media thinks, but what do I think? And also, I think as women, it's still this way to some extent where, we're taught to be very, very agreeable. I was the most agreeable person you could ever imagine, just trying to
It's true. Yeah.
keep my mouth shut, just be sweet and agreeable and help people. And that's number one. And I'm not saying not, I'm actually kind of naturally that way too. I mean, some
Mhm.
people are and aren't, but we're also kind of programmed that way as women. And it took, all of this self-development journey on all these years just took me to a place of wanting to help other women become their most authentic self, to
Mhm.
put their voice out there, to speak their truth.
Yeah.
And really, that's how She's Brave was born. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. And in everything that I do, I made a career change midlife in my early 30s. And so I've been in the fitness industry for over 20 years now. And it's the same thing. I just want women to feel good about themselves and be healthy. You don't have to look like the person in the magazine. You don't have to look like the lady next door. I mean, it's your own journey and you get to choose. No one else gets to decide for you. You have to decide what you want to do and what you want to create. So I love that
Yeah.
message.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you're doing too, because it's all connected. So I think that when you exercise, it gets those endorphins going, which
Mhm.
actually gives you the strength and the courage to take those little steps to live the life of your dreams, basically,
Mhm.
And then also, I know there's psychology behind it, which, as I understand, you incorporate that as well, into your coaching, and all of that stuff all works together.
Mhm. Yeah. So how long have you been doing your podcast?
So I launched last January 2nd of 2023, which was my late husband's birthday.
Oh,
And
new birth.
yeah,
New birth.
um, yep. And I decided, I've gotten a lot better at observing my body and my thoughts. And, I can't always catch them all the time, but I'm getting a lot better at it. And I was noticing that I was really comparing myself to everybody in the class. Like, so anytime anybody else had a big achievement, I'd be like, oh, will I be able to do that? I don't
Yeah.
know. So
Yeah.
I kind of had to take a little step back and not really do too much on social media, just kind of back away from that
Mhm.
and just, send love to everybody in the group, but just know that we're all unique individuals. This is not a competition, which I am 100%
Right.
over that now. Like, in fact,
Good. Yeah.
I am like trying to get other women, raise them up in podcasting. I'm teaching a podcasting class. Like, you wouldn't believe how all the things that have happened. But
That's
in the
great.
beginning, like, I just needed to work on my own self-confidence. And that meant kind of tuning out a lot of the messages out there in the world and just focusing on me and my podcasts. And another thing that I really needed to do was I never, never, never checked my statistics. So it wasn't about that. It wasn't about the numbers. And it wasn't about it. It was just about trying to get out there and get brave women's voices out there in the world and have fun
Mhm.
interviewing. And so finally one day, one of my podcasting buddies um, called me up literally in May and said, Kristina, did you know that you're in the top 2.5% globally? And I went, what?
That's
Really?
cool.
And
Yeah.
she said, yeah, yeah, you really are. Like, just go to listennotes.com, type in your podcast, and there you are. And so I did. And I was like, wow, wow, that's cool.
That's really
And,
cool.
and it's just funny what you put your attention on sometimes too. I mean, it's funny. It's sort of a divine dichotomy because in one way, I couldn't put my attention on the numbers because
Mhm.
if I had been so focused on trying to reach a certain number, and I know everybody likes to visualize and do affirmations and all that stuff, and that's all good, but I could only do it like one step at a time, kind of a
Yeah.
thing. And
Yeah.
and it's if it's out there and you are really attached, like super attached to a certain outcome, you
Mm-hmm.
actually push that thing away from you.
Mm-hmm.
Literally. Literally. Like I recently remarried, and when I was dating again, boy, it's a crazy dating world out there. And I thought, like I'm just gonna go on like a million dates. Like it's all a numbers game. Like this was a couple years back, oh, I'm gonna just go on. Like if I could do this many dates a week, I'm eventually gonna find the right guy. Well,
Yeah.
that didn't work out so well. I was very attached to the outcome of finding somebody.
Yeah.
So I eventually just intuitively knew to stop. Just stop. Just stop. Shut down all the dating apps, shut it all down, just kind of surrendered to, living my life and enjoying my life and being happy. And within a
Mm-hmm.
few months, I met my now husband. So there you go.
Congratulations. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, things are continuing to progress, and I am now in the top 2% globally. The higher you get, the harder it is to make it to the next little
Oh, yeah,
increment.
absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So, but then again, like I've learned so much on my podcasting journey, and one thing I learned about was the importance of a morning routine. So I started doing that, and I felt like it just like I'm a lot more in tune now to downloads, like for lack of a better word, but like just information about what's next for me. And that's one of
Mm-hmm.
the things I do in the morning is I either meditate and or pray, and then I just ask God, like, or the universe, like, what is it I need to do today? Like, what is it I need to know today? What do you need from me today? How can I
Mm-hmm.
serve? And around September, I got this sudden download that I needed to teach other women podcasting, which if you told me that a year ago, I would have said you're bananas. Like, but I don't know. There's just something that it's so joyful for me. And I feel that there are still so many other women's voices that need to be out there, like you,
Mm-hmm.
sharing messages, encouraging women. And we all have our own unique personalities. So, the one listener may resonate deeply with me, and then not with you, and another listener deeply resonates with
Mm-hmm.
you, but not with me. So,
Right.
the podcasting world is not even close to being saturated. We are so far from being saturated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so now I taught my first class, it's just it's called Podcast Mastery, your 6-month journey to the global elite. And I had 70 people sign up. It's wrapping up right now. It was only a
Awesome.
couple of months long. And
Mm-hmm.
I already have a lot of them who are in the top 5 to 10%. So they're doing testimonials. I'm reaching out to them and getting testimonials, and then getting ready to do like a bigger campaign, because I only advertised it in one podcasting group. That was it. That was it. And
Yeah.
that was so I'm gonna, spread my wings a little more. And then my next class is starting in mid-February. So it's been this crazy journey. And I wanted to say, Robin, I'm 55
Mm-hmm.
years old. So all you ladies out there who are saying, oh my gosh, I just turned 40. I can't do this.
Yeah.
Or I just turned 50. I can't do this. Or
Yeah.
I just turned 60. I can't do it. Hey, guess what? Look at me. I was
Yeah.
a mom and a caregiver, and here I am today. It's
Yeah.
possible.
Absolutely. You're never too old to start anything. And in fact, I feel like the older that we get, the more we need to try new things because we get set in our ways.
I love
I
that
mean,
thought.
yeah, I think so.
I've never heard someone say that, and I totally agree. I do think there's a tendency for us to just get actually more and more set. But so we have to
Hmm.
work against that. And it's like, I think people think, oh, well, my peak is over, because I'm not young anymore, whatever, whatever. I had a podcaster ask me the other day, like, if you could have the perfect life, you know, describe that to me, what that looks like. And I
Hmm.
said, Jeannie, I'm living it. I
Yeah.
love my life. I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah.
And that's where we all want to be. And it doesn't matter how old you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can start at any age. And that's my goal, is to live my entire life always learning, always growing, and always moving forward. And I remember when I was really young, I listened to Louise Hay being interviewed on the radio back in the day. And the interviewer, she was 71 and she was just full of fire. And,
Yeah.
the interview asked her, like, when are you going to stop? And she said, I'm never going to stop. She said, this is my life. This is what I do. This is what I love. I'm living the life that I love. She said, I still have 20 plus more years of like messages, and she called it work, but I don't, it's not even work to her. Like, it wasn't work to her. I still have 20 years left of work and messages and things to get out to people. And sure enough, when she was in her early 90s, she passed away. So it's like
Yeah.
she just like died right on cue, like I'm gonna do this and this and this, and then I'm going on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think once you let down those walls that you put around yourself and you restrict yourself, then you all of a sudden see so much more opportunity, and opportunities come your way more. You just have to be able to let all of that down and decide there are no limits. There's zero limits. We get to decide what our limits are.
yeah, and I would like to add to that just even starting a tiny practice in that way, like letting down one tiny wall,
Mm-hmm.
and just experimenting with it and seeing how that feels. And then the more you do it, the more walls come down. And then the funny thing is, and I'm sure you've had the same thing happen to you, is what I notice now is how many people around me have those walls. Like
Yes.
they don't even, they have like a rejection answer to trying that thing like instantly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting.
It is very interesting. It's interesting. And I mean, it can be sad at times too, because you know that there could be so much more out there for them if they would just give it a try. Yeah.
Yep.
And I think like one of the walls that you had said earlier, once you let go of that comparison and competition, I mean, that's huge to be able to let go of that. And then all of a sudden, oh, okay, I'm not competing with Robin. We're in this together. We get to
We are
support each other.
absolutely
How
we are
cool is that?
absolutely in this together. And
Mm.
I just want to lift you up, and I want to support you, and you want to support me, and it's
Same.
beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think women, we are better, we're better at collaborating in general than men. And in the podcasting space in particular, we're oops, sorry. You'll have to edit that out. So yeah, so it in particular, women, we're very collaborative, and that's something that, as I've gone through my journey, that I continue to learn. Like, I used to be that person who was, I can do this myself. I can do it myself.
Mhm.
I can do it alone, because in North American society, we are all like we pride ourselves on our independence, and that's good to a point. But I think a
Mhm.
lot of us just, we have taken it way too far. And I started in podcasting, it just started collaborating, and then, collaborating a little more and more and more. And I'm just like, I really believe that in order to have any kind of successful enterprise, you're going to have to collaborate. Like, you're not going to
Yeah.
make it if you don't collaborate.
No, I agree. I agree. You're going to
Yeah.
need that
And,
support and help around
there's
you.
always somebody that knows something that you don't know, there
Mhm.
always is. And it's like in collaborating, you say, hey, I learned this thing. And the other person says, hey, I learned this thing here. And it's like you also, it speeds the process up, like, of growing your business. The more collaboration you do, the faster your business will grow.
Mhm. No, I agree. I agree. And we're fortunate enough to be in a wonderful group of women that,
Yep.
whew, the help and support is amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you mind if we go back to your exercise regimen? You said that when you met your first husband, it was on a hiking trip. So have you always been an active person? Where does exercise fit into your life now?
Oh, such a great question. I live in the Seattle area, but I grew up in Vancouver, British Columbia. And
Oh, beautiful.
There's so many incredible hikes just that are like less than an hour, from where I grew.
Nice.
So, we jump in the car and drive for 40 minutes and do this some kind of amazing hike with amazing views of the city in the mountains or whatever. And so my family was always into hiking. And as an adult, at that time when I met my husband, um I had a really, really stressful job. It's
Mm.
called a performance analyst. I worked for a pension consulting firm, and the stress was so high that I actually had a dear friend and colleague, who sat next to me who took his own life. Because
Oh my
it was just
gosh.
so
I'm
much stress.
sorry.
So, but I found that, and I have always had anxious tendencies. And actually, after my husband was diagnosed, with Alzheimer's, I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. So that's part of my
Hmm.
message too, is that, you know, that's not I refused to let that be, um, a crutch for me either. Like anxiety
Hmm.
is 100% treatable, and it's okay to ask for help with that. And you can overcome anxiety. You can big time overcome anxiety. But I have found that, um, during that time at that stressful job, like that was a huge thing where I was insanely busy, but I made an effort, to hike like a 6 to 8 hour hike every weekend, either Saturday or
Nice.
Sunday. And then during the week, so funny, my next door neighbors at the time didn't have time to walk their dog. And it was a great dog, like really, it did great on the leash. And I would walk their dog and,
Nice.
on the other days. So I mean, I do feel blessed in that I was brought up in a family that enjoyed hiking. Um, I think that's a blessing for sure because, and here's the other thing, I'm really not like one of those like super athletic people that's like really good at soccer and basketball. And actually, to be honest, when I was a kid in Canada, girls soccer didn't exist. They didn't offer it.
Mm. Yeah.
It was like dance class or nothing. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Same. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm right around your age too, and I live in Kansas, so I don't have the hiking opportunities that you have. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah, I think we all have to find the thing that we're willing to do, like
Mhm.
that we like the most so that it makes it easier to exercise. And even I've moved further out in the city. My husband and I live in a small town of 8,000 people, and I'm looking out on a half an acre of woods that we own. And then beyond that is a green belt. And I have hiking trails that are less than 10 minutes from my house. So,
Nice.
and the mountains are a half an hour, to get in the mountains and hike there. So I've kind of set it up in a good way to make it
Yeah.
easy.
Hmm. Oh, that's wonderful. I'm trying not to be jealous. Oh, goodness. Oh, so this is spandex and wine. So let me ask you then, what do you pour in your glass that makes you happy?
I love that question. That's so funny. Yeah, no, as when I was younger, I was not a wine drinker, but I love wine now.
Okay.
And I'm super blessed because we live about a 15-minute drive from a little town called Woodinville, again, outside of Seattle. And it's become this major wine region where there's over 100 wineries, places
Oh,
you can go
cool.
tasting, and there's like
Hmm.
events all the time. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like you could go to wine
Hmm.
tasting events, like group events, like at all these different wineries, and and they have live music and all kinds of stuff. So my husband and my favorite date night, we try to do it once a week. It doesn't always happen, but we do wine tasting and dinner in Woodinville in the wine tasting
Oh,
district. And
nice.
people think, what, Seattle, it rains all the time. You can't grow grapes. You are correct. We cannot grow grapes here. But we have these tall mountains, very tall mountains just east of our city. If you go to the other side of those mountains, you're in a rain shadow, high desert climate. And it's actually very, very similar to a lot of the climate in France. So, where they make
Oh,
some of the
okay.
best wines. So, it's
Hmm.
like these hot, dry summers. And the grapes, it's just perfect for growing grapes. So we grow our grapes on the other side of the mountains in sort of central kind of Washington.
Okay.
And then they just, basically bring them over here and then process them here. So that's how that works. Because people are like, Washington wines? What do you mean? Like, that's got to be crappy. But oh, if you haven't had Washington wines, Robin, you need to try them.
I have had some wonderful Washington wines. So
Okay,
yes,
good.
I agree. Yes.
Yeah.
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 And we're getting more and more wineries around here too. And I know that, here we also import some grapes from California in
And
different
why
areas.
not? And
Yeah.
California has, the best growing conditions as well, like for
Hmm.
certain types of grapes, like phenomenal, probably the best in the world. My parents were wine drinkers long before it was fashionable because in the 70s and even into the 80s, drinking wine was not really a thing. Like people were still into the cocktails and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
my parents drank California wines and they always said California wines are the best in the world. I still think they are some of the best. I love California wines. I love Oregon wines. I love Washington wines. I have a question for you because
Oh, I'll
that I'm
try.
deeply curious about, which is because of where I've always lived, basically the only wines that I have generally been drinking are from Washington, Oregon, and California.
Oh,
So,
okay.
that's generally what's available when you go to restaurants and all of that. And so those to me taste the best. Those are the ones I
Oh,
get the
okay.
most excited about. When I try a
Hmm.
French wine, I'm like, this tastes a little strange, but I don't know if it's just that my palate has never really gotten accustomed to like a different region of wine.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the case?
Yeah. So what I would say is number one, you drink what you like to drink and don't let anyone else influence you. But two, I
Hmm.
would also say try some different things. Like
Yeah.
are you a red or white drinker?
Generally red, especially in the
Okay.
winter. I will do rosé and white in the summer. I did want to add
Okay.
one thing though. I recently went on a trip to Portugal and
Yes.
I was shocked that I actually loved their wine.
Yes.
And I know
Okay. So
they have
yes, I
port.
love Portuguese wines.
Yeah, port is
Hmm.
a whole nother thing. It's very sweet.
Correct.
But we're just talking regular wine. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I don't like French wine. How come I like Portuguese wine? That was so
Okay.
interesting. I loved it.
Yes. Yes. So if I could only choose from one country, I would probably, if it's red wine, I would probably say Italy or Spain.
Italy or Spain. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I need
But
a
what I was going to
beeline
say
over
is,
there.
yeah. Well, I mean, don't you guys have liquor stores that you could go and get a
Yes. Yeah,
variety?
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Or I can arrange to ship some wines to you. Um, but anyway, yeah, I would stay with the same variety and try it from different regions.
Oh,
Because what
wow.
people tend to find out is if they like a certain region,
Hmm.
then that can open up some other opportunities for
I
them
like
too. So
that. I
right now
like
you're just
that.
into your region, but there's a
Yeah.
whole world out there, Kristina, that you may
Yeah.
fall in love with.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm kind of
I love
excited.
South African wines.
Oh, yeah, I want to try that too. I'm kind of excited.
Mhm.
My husband is not a huge traveler, so a lot of times I travel with my girlfriends, but I got to tell you a cute little story about him. He was always told that way back when, he was French. There was like somebody that came over from France, a few generations back into Ellis Island, New York. And then my husband got into ancestry stuff and research, and he went back and looked at the records and was shocked to find that this person, when they entered Ellis Island, said that they had come over from Sicily, Italy.
Oh.
And but yet 10 years later, on a census form, they were suddenly from France. And the
Hmm.
reason why was that the Italians were discriminated against, in particular Sicilians back in New York City at that time.
Oh.
And so it was better to say you were French than Italian. So, that just like literally went down all the generations. So my husband found out recently that he has some Italian blood. And now he
Okay.
really, 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 and it's Sicily. It's Sicily. So
Hmm.
he's already making plans for us to go to Sicily in the spring. And I'm like beyond elated because he's as I said,
Oh,
he's not a
that's
huge
awesome.
traveler. So I'm gonna be like trying the wines there.
Okay, I want to know. I want to know everything. I want you to keep a
Okay.
little book and I
Okay.
want you to
Keep
report
track.
back.
I love
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Yes. Because you're going to, oh my gosh, Italian wines, you're going to love them. Love them, love them.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this has been so fun. So how can the listeners learn about you and find you?
Yeah. So I think the best place to find me is on Instagram at She's Brave Podcast. You can also check out my website, www.shesbravepodcast.com.
Mhm.
And those, I am also on Facebook, and I even have a podcasting group with the same name as my course coming up. Podcast Mastery, your 6-month journey to the global elite. So that's a private Facebook group. At this point, I am allowing people in for free, and you get free tips and tricks. And anybody who signs up for my class gets in for free as well. Eventually, they will be paying a small monthly fee because it's just such great information
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
and I'm thinking about already offering the next 6 months class because I feel like I've gone through another learning curve, and what comes next after that. And so, yeah, within the next couple of weeks, there will be an early bird special at least till the end of December. You were not going to believe this price. It's $111 for the
Oh,
course.
wow. That's great.
Yep. And then it goes up to 222 because I love repetitive
Okay.
numbers. I know they
Yeah.
supposedly mean something, but to me they're just fun, you know. And the regular price is $500. So you want
Okay.
to get in early.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And will they find that information then eventually on your website?
Yes, probably within the
Okay.
next week or so. There will be actually that you click a link that you click on and then fill it out and pay and get registered. So, yep.
Okay. Okay, cool. Well, this has been so fun. Thank you for
It
taking
has been
time to
so
be with
fun.
me. Yeah.
Yes, I have loved it too, Robin. It's been such a energetic, fun conversation.
Yes. Yes, I agree. Well, you take care, and I hope to talk to you soon in the spring after you go to Italy.
Ooh, I love it. Okay, thanks,
Okay.
Robin.
All right. Bye. Thanks, Kristina. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing so many nuggets of wisdom with us. Here are the takeaways. 1. Dating apps are good, but maybe try local fitness meetups to find your soulmate. 2. Just do something. Put yourself out there to try new things. You might just find your new venture and quiet that deep, unsettling feeling. 3. If you live too much in the past, depression can set in. If you live too much in the future, anxiety can set in. Practice living in the present moment to experience a fullness and joy. 4. Not sure what you want to do in life? Ask 5 of your friends that know you best to share what they think you do well. Your answer could be revealed. 5. Playing the comparison game never goes well. Learn to love yourself and lift others up for the win. 6. Focusing on a specific goal with a quantitative measure attached to it can become overwhelming. Try focusing on the feeling you will get when the goal is achieved and keep your vision on the feels as your goal. 7. Never stop learning. Make choices to always live the life you love. 8. Try letting down one wall at a time to see what opens up for you. 9. The more collaboration you do, the more successful you will be. 10. Anxiety is treatable and can be managed. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And 11. Explore wine outside of your region. Open up your world to new wines by trying all kinds of varieties. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoy this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you take a few seconds to do each or all of the following. First, follow or subscribe to Spandex and Wine. It'll help you so you don't miss an episode, and it'll help me because you won't miss any episodes. To do this, you'll just go to the podcast, click subscribe or follow wherever you are listening. Look for the plus sign or follow button, and this is one of the best things that you can do for the podcast, so thank you. If you'd also be willing to give a 5-star review, that would be amazing. And lastly, please share an episode with a friend or 5 to keep the love going. I appreciate you. Thanks.